Pete Hegseth testifying before the House Armed Services Committee amid a deeply unpopular war that is grinding toward a second month. And the mood was contentious even before the questioning started. Protesters confronted Hegseth on his way into the hearing.
You should be disgusted with yourself.
You need to be arrested. Not to be outdone, Hegseth then used his opening statement to attack the war's critics, calling them the, quote, biggest challenge. Take a listen.
The biggest challenge, the biggest adversary we face at this point are the reckless, feckless, and defeatist words of congressional Democrats and some Republicans.
In return, those reckless, feckless Democrats accused Hegseth of breathtaking hypocrisy, namely accusing his critics of being reckless and feckless while leading a war that has proceeded in the absence of congressional approval and any clear endpoint. Take a listen.
You have been lying to the American public about this war from day one, and so has the president. The strategy has been an outstanding example of incompetence. This war of choice is a political and economic disaster at every level.
You were incompetent then. You're incompetent now.
Do you believe that the president is mentally stable enough to be the commander-in-chief?
Did you ask the same question of Joe Biden for 4 years?
Joe Biden is not the president.
You need to resign immediately.
It's the incompetence.
Hegseth testified that the cost of the Iran war has hit $25 billion so far. That is an enormous figure, but according to Politico, it, quote, falls far behind many outside estimates. Hegseth dodged other critical questions on the Hill today. He refused to give an estimate on the timeline for withdrawal from Iran. He refused to say whether he is, quote, beholden to the president or whether he's beholden to the Constitution. He also refused to say whether he had advised the president to go to war. And then there was this. He got tripped up on a key point. Take a listen.
Their nuclear facilities have been obliterated. Underground, they're buried, and we're watching them 24/7. So we know where any nuclear material
reclaiming
might be.
my time for
we're
just a
watching
quick second here. We had to start this war, you just said, 60 days ago, because the nuclear weapon was an imminent threat. Now you're saying that it was completely obliterated?
They had not given up their nuclear ambitions, and they had a conventional shield of thousands of...
So Operation Midnight Hammer accomplished nothing of substance. It left us at exactly the same place we were before.
Joining me now to kick things off tonight is the admirable Admiral John Kirby, the former White House National Security Communications Advisor. He is also an MS Now national security analyst. Admiral, even some of the Republicans say that the Trump administration has failed to provide a compelling rationale for this war or to articulate what the endgame is here. Do you think that Secretary Hegseth provided any clarity today with this jaunt on the Hill?
I think there were some missed opportunities for the secretary today. I think this would have been a terrific chance for him to lay out what the strategic objectives are and how they're going after each and every one of them. And I didn't see anything in the hearing today, and I watched a lot of it that convinced me that they were actually trying to answer that question. It was a missed opportunity for sure to lay out to the American people finally. I mean, it's been 60 days before the secretary testified finally to lay out why we're doing this and why now.
Well, there have been a lot of questions about the strike on the Iranian girls' school. This happened in the early days of the war. And today, Democratic Congressman Adam Smith brought it up. Let's take a listen to that exchange between the congressman and the secretary.
The girls' school that got hit in the first days of this war. There is absolutely no question at this point what happened. We made a mistake. And that happens in war. We identified this target based on earlier charts, and yet 2 months after it happened, we refused to say anything about it, giving the world the impression that we just don't care. We do not care about the casualties and the chaos that is caused by our war, and we should care.
What do you make of the fact that military leadership has refused to take ownership of what many are regarding as a colossal mistake?
I think it's important for the United States military to complete this investigation as quickly as possible. I'm frankly a little surprised that it's taken this long, although I know there's a lot of interagency coordination that has to go into laying out the findings conclusively. But I think it's important to wrap this up quickly and to be completely transparent with the American people about what happened, why it happened, and more critically, how we're going to prevent it from happening in the future. I know that the U.S. Central Command did a thorough job here. I've talked to some officials there. I think there's a process problem here that it's taken too long to work its way through, but it's imperative. And Representative Smith is not wrong. I mean, we should come clean on this so that we can, more importantly, learn from it and prevent it from happening again.
What does it mean, though, that we won't acknowledge that perhaps a mistake was made here? Even in the absence of a conclusive investigation, something obviously went wrong.
I want to believe, Melissa, that what's slowing this down is the interagency coordination process, because the preliminary findings, at least as reported in the press, made it seem like it was the intelligence was perhaps old that was applied to the targeting solution, and the intelligence that was provided to the military came from outside the military. So I want to believe that what's slowing this down is the coordination process with the intelligence community, and they'll wrap this up quickly. That's the generous view. I think the cynic's view would be that this administration doesn't like to admit mistakes, doesn't like to apologize, doesn't like to show what they consider weakness. But it's not weakness. If you've made a mistake, if you've hit something in error, then admit it as soon as you possibly can and tell the public what you're going to do to try to prevent it from happening again. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's confidence. That's security in your process and in your military capabilities. And that's not what's being transmitted to the American people right now. Again, I want to believe this is a process problem and not a policy problem. But the cynics, I understand, are out there thinking that this is more of a policy issue.
Well, the cynics are not just focused on that particular issue. They also have raised concerns over Hegseth's personnel decisions. Take a listen to Congressman Don Bacon.
I share a bipartisan concern of the firings that we've seen at the Pentagon. 4 of the 6 service chiefs, for example, the Coast Guard. We had a huge bipartisan majority here that had confidence in the Army Chief of Staff and the Secretary of Navy. And I would just point out, it may be constitutionally right. You have the constitutional right to do these things, but it doesn't make it right or wise.
So there have been a lot of discussion of these personnel firings within the military, and some news outlets, including the New York Times, have noted that women and minorities appear to bear the brunt of these firings. Yeah. What do you make of this shift in the personnel, and what does it mean for the fighting force that is incredibly diverse, as our armed forces are, to have a leadership structure that may be less diverse in terms of race and gender than it has been in the past?
It's hard to know to know exactly how to answer that question, because they haven't been transparent about why these individuals are being fired.